This is CBC Here and Now.
We understand the gravity of the situation. We are aware of the significant impact this type of disruption has on the traveling public during a pandemic especially.
Travelers are being told, get in while you can.
As union talks continue at St. John's Airport, commercial flights can now land, but for how long?
As schools hand out hundreds of thousands of tests, education officials are still mulling over what will happen on Monday.
I have mixed emotions. I fully understand the mixed emotions that parents have and students have.
Coming up on Here and Now.
It hasn't been much of a winter for snow lovers in eastern portions of the island, but it looks like we might see some snow on Friday.
Good evening and welcome to Here and Now. I'm Peter Cowan.
And I'm Carolyn Stokes. Well, most commercial flights got the green light at St. John's International Airport today, but that could all change by tomorrow morning.
Yeah, 8 a.m. specifically. That's when the only two remaining firefighters staffing the airport come off their 24-hour shift.
A mediator is now working with the union and the airport to find a solution to the staffing shortage. 7 of the airport's 9 firefighters are off on sick leave. Now, the union says it's because of a toxic workplace. Workers have complained of bullying and harassment on the job. And with so many on leave, the airport is struggling to accommodate commercial flights. Last night, only small planes with 19 seats or less were able to take off or land. The head of the airport authority hopes the situation can be resolved before 8 a.m. tomorrow to find replacement firefighters to meet federal safety requirements. But what about after that? Could commercial flights again be canceled tomorrow?
Unknown at this point. It rests on us being able to secure more qualified firefighters to replace the ones that we currently have. We've worked tirelessly and in correspondence with Transport Canada, taking their guidance as well on how we would source those. So we've looked across Canada at various options, including other airports, municipalities, contractors, and so on.
And Peter Avery also says he needs the union's support to recruit replacement workers and resume regular operations. He says he takes the complaints of a toxic workplace seriously and they're being addressed. As for the airlines and travelers, Avery is suggesting they try to get here before tomorrow morning.
So unfortunately, a lot of our commercial traffic has been affected today. If they can adjust their planning and get in, before 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. Right now, there's nothing preventing normal traffic from coming. Our airline partners are advised when we can to the situation. It does require a lot of planning, obviously. We understand a reluctance to send a flight, obviously, if there is remaining uncertainty. But as soon as we have more information that we can provide our airline partners, we will to relieve that uncertainty.
And one of those airlines is responding to the impact this has had on its operations. In a statement to the CBC today, Air Canada said the airline was forced to cancel 8 flights between yesterday and this morning. Air Canada has since contacted customers and offered them alternatives, including flights to Gander. Tonight, Air Canada says its flights from Toronto and Halifax should go ahead as scheduled. No word yet on what will happen tomorrow.
The flight cancellations are creating confusion and chaos for travelers. Understandably, they worry disruptions could continue. Maggie Brown-Burry is planning to fly from Labrador City, where she's been working the past 2 weeks, to St. John's on Saturday morning. She wonders now if that flight will go ahead.
Not clear that this temporary solution is going to be something that can work long term, and how long is it going to take them to get to a resolution. So I'm going to be keeping an eye on it.
So while Brown-Burry hopes to get home Saturday to see her family, she says she understands where the firefighters are coming from and she doesn't mind sitting tight until the issue gets resolved.
My understanding is that the firefighters are taking a leave because of a toxic work environment, which is something that I personally feel strongly about is a problem in my industry. It's a problem for a lot of industries over these last couple of years, and I certainly support anyone's decision to say the circumstances I am working in are not sustainable and I'm not going to do it anymore. And I think the onus is on the workplace to try to find a way to alleviate that.
It's a risky job in more ways than one.
I was originally diagnosed in 2018 with kidney cancer.
That's why a St. John's firefighter is pushing for more cancer coverage for his colleagues. That's just ahead.
Well, a big topic of conversation over the past year or so has been how windy it has been, certainly in St. John's. And Rodney Barney from Environment Canada actually looked into some of those numbers for us. So I just wanted to share those with you. You are not wrong to say that it has been windy, certainly in the last 10 years. These are the gusts near or above 60 kilometers per hour for St. John's. You can see within the last 10 years, they've been over the 100 mark, 143 last year. And then we talk about those gusts upwards of 100 kilometers per hour, and we're kind of seeing the same trend within the last 10 years. Certainly from 2014 to 2021, we've seen that uptick for sure, anywhere from 10 to 14 days, even 16 days where we've seen those 100 kilometer per hour wind gusts. So looked at a couple other places as well, definitely not seeing the same trend, but definitely are. We definitely are for St. John. So we added to that today in the 2022 tick. We can add another 60 kilometer per hour day, and we're going to do that again tomorrow. I'll have the full forecast when I come back.
Thanks, Ashley. There's a jump today in the number of people in hospital because of COVID-19. Public Health says the number of people in hospital has risen from 14 to 18 in the last 24 hours. That's the highest number of people in hospital so far during the pandemic. 4 of those are in intensive care. For the first time in a while, there are more new cases than there are recoveries today. 511 confirmed positive since yesterday. There are now slightly more than 3,200 active cases in Newfoundland and Labrador, more than 70% of those in the Eastern Health region of the island. Well, the province is expecting its first shipment of a new drug designed to keep people out of hospital. There will be enough pills for about 500 people to receive it in Newfoundland and Labrador. Clinical trials found that the pills reduce the chance of someone ending up in hospital by almost 90%. But not everyone will be eligible to get them. The target will be the elderly, those with chronic conditions, and one other group.
Naturally, the patient at risk of admission or death is unvaccinated. So we would focus this drug on people that are unvaccinated.
Dr. Peter Daly explains why this pill is an important new tool for doctors, coming up in our full interview a little later in the show.
Well, as schools across the province begin handing out hundreds of thousands of rapid tests, it's still uncertain if schools will reopen on Monday. The province's education minister says he believes students need to get back to the classroom, but the Progressive Conservative education critic is calling on the province to err on the side of caution. Here now's Mark Quinn reports.
At Gonzaga High School in St. John's, students and parents are picking up rapid tests to prepare for the return to classrooms. The school board expects to distribute about 375,000 kits.
About 50% we're expecting will be done today. Some smaller schools might get it all out, but a larger school like Corner Brook Regional High, for example, may take 2 days.
The education minister says it's being done today in case schools are given a green light to reopen on Monday. That decision was expected today. Osborne says it's clear parents are divided about what should happen next.
I have children in school. I have mixed emotions. I fully understand the mixed emotions that parents have and students have right now. We are getting, I would say if you were to do a poll, 50 or 60% of people want to be back in school. You probably have 50% of people who don't want to be in the classroom but would rather do online learning. So whatever decision you make here, there are people going to be in favor of it, and there are people that are going to have concerns with it.
Osborne has heard concerns about the reliability of tests and fears about outbreaks in schools. He's also heard from pediatric doctors who strongly support reopening schools now. The Progressive Conservative Party has heard those same concerns, and its education critic wants the province to hold off on reopening schools.
I think they need to push out the date. I think the 24th is too soon. I think in the last week that we've all seen the numbers continually stay high, and I think parents have spoken out too. And we got to respect it once again. They're the parents of the children. They know what's best for their child, and they're speaking out loud and clear that they're not comfortable sending their children back to school.
Petton says schools should stay closed for at least another week. The education minister says the province will follow the advice of public health officials. A briefing is scheduled for tomorrow, and officials are expected to announce what will happen next. Mark Quinn, CBC News, St. John's.
That's what's happening with K-12. What about university students? Well, Memorial issued an update on its classes. Most students and academic staff should be planning to return to campus on Monday, January 31st. On the St. John's campus, classes with enrollment of 99 or fewer will resume in person. Classes with 100 students or more will continue remotely. As previously announced, labs, performing arts programs, and practicums will take place in person where possible. At Grenfell campus, most of the classes will proceed in person, but with some remaining remote. The Marine Institute students, meanwhile, they should plan to continue to return to campus for in-person classes on January 31st. A 3-ply non-medical face mask will be mandatory unless exemptions are given.
Well, a by-election could soon be underway for residents of Labrador City to elect a new member of council. The town announced this afternoon that Brian Barnett has resigned as mayor effective immediately due to personal health matters. Council will decide what happens next and set a date for a by-election at next week's council meeting. Well, Peter, their job is to save lives, but firefighters need help themselves. When they do, they turn to the Provincial Workplace Health, Safety and Compensation Act.
It offers coverage for 11 different kinds of cancer, but one local firefighter is hoping that expands. Here now's Enrica Wilhelm has that story.
When Jim O'Toole became a firefighter over 20 years ago, he didn't expect to get sick.
I was originally diagnosed in 2018 with kidney cancer. I did have a surgery to remove part of my kidney, and that was pretty much the treatment. That was it. And then unfortunately 5 months later, I had a mole removed off the side of my head and was diagnosed with melanoma.
Since 2017, firefighters are insured for 11 different kinds of cancer. They all fall under work-related injuries. Kidney cancer is covered, melanoma is not. But O'Toole thinks it should be, along with prostate, ovarian and cervical cancer, as well as heart injury that occurs during or within 24 hours of an emergency call. Manitoba and the Yukon have recently changed their legislation to cover 19 cancers. Only 2 other provinces cover fewer than Newfoundland and Labrador. That's New Brunswick and Nova Scotia.
The science is there, and now it's time that we get brought up to the rest of the country. And, you know, I'd like to see us be leaders in this, not always trying to play catch up like we've done in the past.
Another one of O'Toole's messages, decontamination is key. That means showering straight after a fire, cleaning gear and the truck cabin.
I see what it does, and I've dealt with families who've lost loved ones to this, so you see how they're affected.
Smoke, gas and asbestos exposures, 24-hour shifts, the use of diesel fuel for equipment. For firefighters, these emergencies pose various risks.
Depending upon what's being burned, that smoke can contain different things. It's not necessarily the same for every fire. But some firefighters work at stations where they only rarely go out for a fire. Some firefighters work at stations where they frequently go out.
There are about 450 career and 5,900 volunteer firefighters in the province, according to the Department of Justice and Public Safety. Since 2017, Workplace NL has paid 27 claims. Most common, lung and kidney cancer. How many claims were submitted? Workplace NL wouldn't say, citing privacy concerns.
Colon cancer and prostate cancer. Mesothelioma has been seen in some studies. testicular cancer. There's a whole variety of different types of cancers that have been seen.
The workers' compensation system is currently under review. In a report last June, the addition of the 4 cancers and 24-hour heart injury pushed by O'Toole was recommended. But O'Toole believes many firefighters and their families don't even know they are already eligible for coverage. Henrike Wilhelm, CBC News, St. John's.
It's estimated there's close to $3 million worth of damage as a result of this week's storm.
It's been 40 years since the blizzard of '82 hit Western Labrador, leading to a state of emergency and causing millions in damages.
Next, we're taking a look back at that historic winter storm.
Well, the Avalon hasn't seen too much in the way of snow for most of January, but if you love snow, you're really going to like the forecast.
Ashley, we've been snowless in St. John's for pretty much most of this winter. It sounds, though, like snow lovers have a little bit of reason for optimism later on this week.
Yep, it definitely looks like it. Now, not nearly as much snow as we have seen in parts of the province through January, but definitely going to see a coating for sure out there thanks to an Alberta Clipper. Let's take a look at what's going on weather-wise. You can see that Alberta Clipper just making its way across Ontario as we speak, and it is bringing some of that shower or flurry activity through the maritime provinces right now, and that is going to continue to track our way as we head through the evening hours tonight. But right now we're sitting under a ridge of high pressure. That cold air has moved in as well. Those temperatures out there pretty chilly across the board, and everything that is falling as some snow or some flurries out there, not any really too much in the way of accumulation in the east anyway. If we zoom in a little bit, you can see some of those flurries making their way across the Avalon. Temperatures today were mild to start. Now this was overnight last night, 4 degrees in St. John, 0 in Corner Brook, but that cold air gripping Labrador again. Minus 26 was the afternoon high in Lab City today, and those temperatures for the southeast, warm as well, 2 degrees for both Cartwright and Mary's Harbour. And if we take a look at where you're sitting right now, those temperatures have dropped down to the minus 10 for Mary's Harbour, minus 15 for Cartwright. And those temperatures across the island have dropped this afternoon as well. And definitely feeling chilly out there with that wind chill, minus 11 for St. John's and minus 16 for Stephenville right now. So if you're planning on enjoying this lovely evening, make sure you do bundle up as there is quite a bit of a wind chill. Now, as we head through the night tonight, we're going to lose a couple more degrees right across the board. About minus 19 tonight for St. Anthony. Those winds will stay out of the southwest or west, gusting the highest in the east. We'll see those gusts continuing upwards of about 50 kilometers per hour, but those winds up across Labrador will be out of the west, and they'll be gusting somewhere between 20 to 40 kilometers per hour. That blowing snow advisory now has ended for coastal areas of Labrador. Minus 33 tonight in Lab City, and if we take a look at what's going to happen with the wind chills overnight tonight, they're going to be sitting in the mid-minus 30s for most of the big land, and they're going to drop for the island as well into the minus teens through the overnight, and eventually we're going to see that warm up as we get into the morning. Now, Environment Canada has reissued that extreme cold warning. This will be for tomorrow night. Those temperatures will dip again, and we'll see those wind chill values closer to the mid-minus 40s, even minus 50 into the morning hours on Friday. Here's your forecast for tomorrow as far as temperatures go. They will be above zero again from Corner Brook through to Bay Vert over and across to the Avalon. Temperatures sitting between 2 to 6 degrees as the daytime highs, but those temperatures north of that should stay below zero, 0 to minus 2. And then we've got those temperatures up across Labrador into the minus 20s as well. So we'll just time that out for you as far as what's going to happen, because this system will move through. It'll start as snow, and the temperatures as we get into the morning hours are going to start to climb. So by the time we're 8, 9 o'clock in the morning, the southwest will already be above zero, and most of that precipitation will have changed over to rain. And we're going to see that for the eastern half of the island. Now, as you get towards Corner Brook, Stephenville, you may see a few hours of rain, but overall this will generally stay as snow for you, and then the east will be mainly rain. But that temperature is going to dip right in behind there. So we are looking at the snow changing back to snow, and this is where we're going to potentially see that significant snowfall, well, shovelable snowfall, I should say, for the eastern areas of the island. So overnight still falling as rain, but as that temperature drops through Friday morning, this is when we're going to see that transition through to snow and continue through most of Friday. Now, as far as accumulations go, we're looking at some areas through Thursday afternoon, about 5 to 10 centimeters, but then as that main event moves through, some areas pointing, we could see upwards of about 10 centimeters for the island. Now, not a whole lot happening up across Labrador, certainly in the west, but today marks an anniversary, 40 years since a major storm led to the state of emergency. Storm 82 still has people talking today, and Daryl Dinn has that look back.
With the wind chill, it was minus 100 degrees in Labrador City last night.
40 years later, people in Western Labrador still talk about Storm 82. It was the worst storm to hit Western Labrador in its history. Strong winds knocked out power, water pipes froze solid with the cold temperatures. 2,000 people in the Hairy Lake subdivision were forced out, with temperatures as low as -100 with the wind chill.
We lost all our power quite early, and we were all bundled up. And to make something to eat, my mom took a broiler, put it into the sink, and lit some paper towels on fire, and she made toast for me doing that.
Yeah, that was my route, was in the trailer park, and of course they lost power and everybody had to be evacuated because of all the freezing. I'm not sure if it was 1 week or 2 weeks following that I actually had to set up my desk at the old post office in the Carroll Lake Shopping Center. So instead of me going to houses, people were coming in there and picking up their mail. So it was actually the easiest time that I ever was a mail carrier in Lab City.
Her mom basically said that I wasn't going anywhere, I had to stay, so which was good with me at the time. I didn't mind spending the day and the night up at my girlfriend's house. Next door neighbors ended up coming over because they had no wood stove, so there was a bunch of people in the basement basically hunkered down with mattresses and things, you know.
Yeah, I guess we just pulled all the mattresses and blankets and pillows and spread them out and, you know, stayed in the basement and stayed warm basically.
In the nighttime, like we were all getting ready to go to bed, I remember Elsie's mom saying, okay, Elson, you're over there. Dennis, you're sleeping over right there. And where's Dennis? Kind of thing, you know what I mean? But she was good, but she made sure she kept us apart.
Everyone has a story, but perhaps none as spectacular as Chad Gulliver. He was making national news because his mother gave birth to him at home.
I called the RCMP. They said, no way, you can't get across the lake. So they said they phoned the hospital.
My mom's cramps were turning into contractions. So I guess my dad called the RCMP then, but I guess they said we can't send an ambulance, but we can maybe send a tractor to get you across the lake. And from what I've read, I guess they were worried the tractor would have gotten stuck in the snowstorm, and they were afraid I would have been delivered in the tractor and would have froze to death.
When you found out you couldn't get to the hospital, were you scared?
At first I was, yeah. Really scared.
What happened?
But then I figured it'd be better to be safe home than halfway across the lake in a tractor, have the baby.
And did everything go smoothly?
Perfect, yeah. Really. Twice as easy and smooth as it was with him. I couldn't believe it. I think if I were to have another one, I might think about having it at home if I thought it would go as easy as this one did.
Inspired by their experiences, Frank Savile's grade 6 class at J.R. Smallwood Collegiate wrote a poem called The Ballad of Hairy Lake. Here's an excerpt read by him and former student Karina Ralph.
The storm was mean, they were snowed in. The windows were all iced. Snow was hammered through the sashes. Scared people prayed to Christ.
The big red buses, the yellow ones too, went out in the freezing cold and picked up the homeless evacuees when the storm was a day old.
The formula for calculating wind chill changed about 20 years ago, so Storm 82 would have different temperatures if it happened today. Regardless of the numbers, those who lived through it describe it as the storm of a lifetime, one people here still talk about.
As each home becomes livable, people will be allowed to move in.
Daryl Dinn, CBC News, Labrador City.
We know that the most important risk factor for admission or death in COVID-19 is age. Therefore, this drug will be focused on the most elderly people.
Well, it's being called a game changer. More on that newly approved pill for COVID-19 just ahead.
Doctors have a new tool to help fight COVID-19. It's a drug that was approved by Health Canada this week, designed to keep people from getting really sick. So how does it work? How is it going to be used in this province? Well, Dr. Peter Daly is a professor of infectious diseases at Memorial University. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Peter.
I've heard this drug described by some as sort of a game changer. How big does this move the bar on how we treat people who get COVID-19?
Yeah, I think our initial efforts have been focused on people in hospital with COVID-19. That would be those we call severe or critical, requiring oxygen or requiring ventilation. And the research has focused on drugs in that sphere, which would save lives. Now we've started to move into mild or moderate community-based COVID-19. And what's exciting about the recent announcement from 2 drug companies is that a tablet may be available. And a tablet, of course, is much easier to deliver outside of the hospital setting. And the intention of these new tablets would be to prevent admission to hospital only in those people with COVID-19 that are very early in infection and at great risk of progression to requiring admission.
Okay, when you talk about great risk of progression, who is actually going to be eligible to receive this new drug?
Naturally, the patient at risk of admission or death is unvaccinated. So we would focus this drug on people that are unvaccinated. We have only 1 clinical trial on each of these 2 drugs from each of these 2 companies. So the evidence is very, very limited, but both of these trials were done specifically among unvaccinated people. Why? Because those are the people at risk of admission or death. And so that's who we have studied to date.
I want to dig into that because some people at home are going to say, well, hold on a second here. These people have decided not to get vaccinated. Shouldn't me, who's done everything that I needed to, I've got this extra level of protection, shouldn't I be considered more worthy because, you know, these people have made a choice not to take advantage of the protection that's available?
We strongly recommend vaccination for everybody because vaccination reduces infection, reduces admission, and reduces death. We do know that those that choose against vaccination are the ones that are filling our hospitals and filling our ICUs. And so this drug was at least initially studied in this group being the highest risk group. This does not mean that we want people to be unvaccinated. We want very much people to be vaccinated. Furthermore, these drugs are being studied now, and we haven't seen results yet, among vaccinated people also.
So even amongst the sort of unvaccinated, there's a very limited supply right now. How are you going to decide who is more likely to get it and who won't?
Right, so the supply of the drug is a big challenge. Brand new drug. The federal government has provided limited, very limited supply to provinces according to size of provinces. Therefore, we will be receiving small numbers of doses in the range of 500 treatments to start with. And our job is to prioritize patients at risk of admission or death to give this treatment to. So according to the study that we have available, this would be a patient with a positive COVID test, antigen or PCR, within 5 days of onset of symptoms. So they would be very early in disease. They would be unvaccinated or under-vaccinated, that is to say less than 3 doses. And they would be at risk of admission, that is to say elderly, immunocompromised, and comorbid, people with more serious levels of disease, renal failure, liver problems, diabetes, obesity, cigarette smoking, people who are at risk of having severe outcomes from their COVID-19. So we are establishing priorities, and it's something that we're doing very carefully with assistance from the Public Health Agency and from CADITH, which does appropriateness assessments in health, to give priority to those at greatest risk. We know that the most important risk factor for admission or death in COVID-19 is age. Therefore, this drug will be focused on the most elderly people. Those above the 80 years cutoff would be considered at extremely high risk of progression.
You mentioned one of the criteria you're going to be using is someone who tests positive. Right now, we are not testing everyone who we even think has COVID-19. So, for example, if someone, is exposed to a known case, they have symptoms, you're just told, assume that you have it. Doesn't that limit our ability then, because maybe that person is over 80, maybe they have some of those risk factors you talked about, but because they didn't get a test, they're not going to be in the system and we're not going to know about it to be able to give them the drug?
We would only administer the drug according to the evidence we have, which would be in people that have a positive test. It would be at this point inappropriate to give this to someone that we have not proven has COVID-19.
Does this change our risk equation when it comes to COVID-19 in general? Because a lot of the focus has been we need to reduce cases so we don't overburden the healthcare system. Does this allow us to maybe have more cases if we have this other tool that also keeps people out of hospital?
These priorities shift according to the status of the epidemic, right? So the fundamental priority is still vaccination. We would like to see every Newfoundlander and Labradorian vaccinated according to guidelines immediately. But we are gaining new tools. And when it comes to a tablet to treat COVID-19, that is a brand new tool, and it does open up new opportunities for us. For instance, our focus on treatment has always been once the patient enters the hospital. Now we're going to be able to shift the focus to prior to hospital admission. And so this does open up a new area for control and treatment.
Well, Dr. Daly, I appreciate you joining us and sharing some of your insights. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Well, returning now to our top story, the ongoing situation at St. John's International Airport. Now, the union representing airport firefighters is in mediation, working to resolve those staffing issues at the airport, which are causing commercial flight cancellations. The union just issued a statement saying it's willing to stay at the table as long as necessary to try to resolve the matter. It says its allegations of bullying and harassment were founded, and instead of trying to address the issues, the airport did the bare minimum. The union does not believe the airport is taking responsibility for what it calls years of abuse that it helped to perpetuate. Still, the union says its priority is to work with the federal mediator towards a solution. And for more details on this developing story, you can head to our website at cbc.ca/nl.
While a CBC News investigation is digging into the history of a man named Robert Rausch. He may be known to people in this province. In 2010, he tried to buy the former paper mill in Grand Falls, Windsor, a tentative deal that fell through when he wanted more than $50 million in loans and guarantees from the provincial government.
Well, he's known as the liquidator for buying, then shuttering struggling businesses. He's been convicted of fraud and has racked up decades of debt. Now, after getting substantial government supports during the pandemic, more than a dozen former employees say he simply stopped paying them. Jonathan Gatehouse has the story.
We feel stolen from.
For Haley O'Brien, a job at PPE supply company Antiseptic Pro seemed like a good get during a pandemic. But soon she found herself among a group of 14 ex-employees, filing claims with Ontario's Labour Ministry for missing paychecks.
It's wage theft. We want to know where this money's going.
Kevin Lee was hired by Antiseptic Pro owner Rob Roche last summer to design a website. After asking about the month of pay he was owed, he was fired on the spot.
Well, it feels really disgusting.
Documents obtained by CBC News show companies owned by Roche received at least $85,000 in government subsidies, from provincial and federal pandemic assistance to training grants for new hires, even as unpaid wage claims piled up against him. We tried to ask Roche about the complaints, but for weeks he deflected our interview requests.
Yeah, I will get back to you shortly, okay?
Even when we paid him a visit at his Toronto office.
Hey, Mr. Roche.
But that attempt did prompt him to send this video statement a day later, flanked by employees saying he's working on a deal with the province to repay the wages and that he's seeking a federal payroll audit.
With reference to the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy, we have asked the Canada Revenue Agency to conduct a trust account audit for the past 2 years to prove our transparency.
Roche declined to provide documents to back up those claims. In a statement, Ontario's Ministry of Labour says investigations are ongoing, but confirmed it has issued 12 orders to pay so far. Court files show a pattern of unpaid wages and debts going back almost 30 years, and claims from former employees across Canada, including Manitoba, where Roche bought and shuttered StyleRite, a discount department store chain in 1995, throwing 400 people out of work. Records also reveal Roche has 4 separate fraud convictions, the last in 2001, netting him a year in jail. After a series of failed businesses in Europe, Antiseptic Pro is just the latest Canadian venture for Roche, following investments in everything from vocal coaching to Viagra sales, leaving his former employees to wonder how the liquidator can keep starting new companies without paying his old staff. Jonathan Gatehouse, CBC News, Toronto.
Well, in other news, a German couple who recently immigrated to Cape Breton say they're afraid for themselves and their young son, all because of a man who first helped them with their move. That man has previously distributed Nazi propaganda, and police have since charged him with extortion and weapons offenses. Still, the couple says they will not be driven away from their new home. Tom Ayers has that story.
Sandra Schmidt and Dirk Westerhoff moved from Germany to rural Cape Breton about a year ago. They bought land from Frank Eckhart and rented space from him for a business in St. Peter's. Schmidt says after a dispute over the lease, Eckhart demanded money and threatened to have their visas revoked.
We was very shocked for the first time when he threatened us that he kick us out of the country. But then we talk and we say, no, we want to live in fear here, we want to live in freedom here, and we want to live here, and we want to stay here and see our son grow up and and a beautiful country.
After Schmidt called RCMP, Eckhart was charged with extortion. A couple of weeks later, the couple were out on their property with their young son looking for a Christmas tree. They then heard gunshots coming from the property next door, which Eckhart owns. Fearing for their lives, they called RCMP again. Police executed a search warrant at Eckhart's home near Grand River, and they seized handguns, shotguns, and rifles, along with thousands of rounds of ammunition and more than $137,000 in cash. Eckhart was subsequently charged with 13 offenses, including careless storage and transport of firearms and having unregistered handguns. The allegations have not been proven in court. Schmidt says the situation is somewhat ironic.
So I have so many Canadian friends, and they are also friendly. They say hello and welcome, and so I'm here and have trouble with the German guy.
Eckhart did not respond to multiple requests for comment. He's been in the news before for running a business selling overpriced land to Europeans, offering immigration help, and distributing Nazi propaganda. Eckhart is free on conditions, including to have no contact with Schmidt or Westerhoff. Schmidt says Eckhart has breached that condition twice already, and police say they're investigating. Still, Schmidt says her family does not regret immigrating.
I'm happy to be here in Canada because the Canadian for me is to live free and tolerant, but also I think I don't want to live in fear here.
In court documents, RCMP say Eckhart has been the subject of 8 prior police investigations, including one involving firearms. They also list several other allegations against Eckhart that have not resulted in charges. They include driving around Richmond County with loaded guns and carrying a concealed handgun in a shoulder holster while at a local beach. In the documents, RCMP say Eckhart has displayed a pattern that has put public safety in jeopardy, but the Mounties spokesman says there's no need for alarm.
Obviously, if you live in the community, you want to be aware of what's going on in your community and keep yourself aware. But I wouldn't say that I don't think you need to be concerned if you're out and about in downtown St. Peters or anywhere in Richmond County. This is an isolated. These are 2 isolated incidents to a group of people known to each other.
Eckhart is expected to face extortion and weapons charges in provincial court in Port Hawkesbury next month. Tom Ayers, CBC News, near St. Peters.
So earlier we talked about the 40th anniversary of a historic blizzard that caused millions in damages. No, we're not talking about Snowmageddon. We're talking about the blizzard of '82 in Western Labrador. It knocked out power, froze water pipes, forced people from their homes. It was a big one.
Yes, it's a storm that people in the area remember very well. We were looking in our archives and found some news reports from that time. Just have a look.
The freezing temperatures and gusting winds began late Sunday. By Monday, winds were raging at close to 100 kilometers per hour, and a weather warning was in effect. Residents were advised to make their way to the nearest shelter, and cars were abandoned all over the roads. The winds caused sporadic power failures that lasted for 36 hours. The hardest hit was an electrically serviced trailer park where more than 2,000 people had to be rescued after having been without heat for 6 hours. They were taken to schools where they spent a rather uncomfortable night, although there was one consolation: it was warm.
You've got sleeping bags there, and yeah, it's not too bad.
So do you have any idea how long you'll have to stay here?
No, I have no idea. It depends on the weather, I guess, and how long it takes to get the power back out there.
By Tuesday, most evacuees had obtained alternate shelter at the homes of relatives or friends. Although power was restored to the town this morning, the evacuees were still not permitted to return to their homes due to some exterior damage and concern that thawing water pipes could burst. Power has been restored now, but engineers say frozen water pipes are riddled with cracks like this one. There are severe plumbing problems. The park will have to be drained of water so that 3 weeks' worth of repairs can be carried out, making the trailers unlivable during that period. It means residents will have to find other places to live. If they want, chartered aircraft will fly them outside the area to the homes of relatives or friends. But efforts are being made to relocate people within Labrador City first, and so the numbers that will actually leave here is still not known.
That we would prefer not to have anybody leave at all, if that's at all possible. But we can't make that kind of a decision either until we know what the situation is in the trailer park, how long it's going to take to get it fixed. I mean, you know, if it can be done in a couple of weeks or less, or perhaps a little more, then it may not be necessary to ship anyone anywhere.
For residents, it's an inconvenience that they'll just have to put up with.
Like, you know, you haven't got the proper facilities that you want, you know, you have to go out and eat with other people, and everything's crowded, you know, and, you know, paying for a trailer and not being able to live in it, something else too.
Meanwhile, the rest of Labrador City has pretty well recovered from the storm. Damage figures could be in the millions. People have been told there will be government assistance to help cover the costs. Catherine Wright, CBC News in Western Labrador.
This weather update is brought to you by the NL511 app. Know before you go. Check road conditions, highway cameras, and the provincial plow tracker with the NL511 app.
Well, it has certainly been a busy month of weather for a good chunk of the island. Certainly seeing lots of rain events for the island as well. But another one, it looks like as we head through the day tomorrow, not quite as much rain as we've seen, but then as we head into Friday, we're going to see that transition back to snow. Let's time that one out for you. I showed you a little bit earlier, but we are going to see that transition through to snow Thursday evening for central Newfoundland, and then as we get into the morning hours, that's when eastern areas of the island should start to see that changeover. Now, likely going to see upwards of about 10 centimeters. That's certainly possible for a good chunk of eastern Newfoundland. And we're going to eventually see that end as we get through the day on Friday. So it'll fall fairly quickly, and those temperatures are going to drop as the day goes on. So hovering around the 0 degree mark for St. John's, and then the rest of the island looking at those temperatures a little bit cooler, about -6 for Corner Brook, -13 for St. Anthony. You're going to sit this one out with a mix of sun and cloud, and then Labrador cold but beautiful day, -24 in Happy Valley Goose Bay, -23 in Nain. Now as we get into Saturday, those temperatures are going to moderate a little bit up across Labrador, so they're going to warm up about -10 to -13 with sunshine. Quiet day for the island as well, maybe a few flurries for the west coast, but those temperatures will be chilly again. However, not a lot of wind, so it actually is going to feel like a beautiful winter day. And then we start talking about Sunday. Now, some models are pointing at the potential for some snow on Sunday. Definitely going to have to keep an eye on that one. But as we get into Monday, Still looking at that chance of some flurries hovering around the 0 degree mark, so we're going to stay below 0 at least for a couple of days. Then for central Newfoundland, you're looking at those temperatures in and around the minus single digits. Sunshine on Saturday, Sunday looking at a mix of sun and cloud, then that flurry activity will return for both central and western Newfoundland as we get into the beginning of next week. And then for eastern Labrador, you're looking at sunshine through Saturday, then unsettled into Sunday, but a nice warm up, minus 8 degrees for you. And then western Labrador will stay in the minus teens and then eventually drop to the minus 20s as we get into Monday. I had to share this photo with you. Bedit shared this one with me saying that Scout loves watching the weather. Great shot there. Thank you so much. If you have any weather photos or photos like this that you would like to share with us, send them to nlphotos@cbc.ca.
I wonder if Scout there was looking to see if drizzle would pop up there.
Yeah, that is pretty cute. Drizzle the weather dog. So, Peter, tomorrow's going to be a pretty big day, especially for parents and teachers and students.
Yeah, anyone involved in the education system. So yeah, we are expecting an update tomorrow at 2 p.m. Island time, so 1:30 in Labrador, with the latest on what the plan is for next week and beyond. Will students be going back to class? We saw from Mark Quinn's report today that they're handing out the rapid tests so that they're ready to do the tests, because the idea would be that you do them on Friday and then right before you go back to class, so 2 different tests. So yeah, they're still figuring out all those details, so we're expecting details on that, plus of course the latest on the COVID situation from the Chief Medical Officer of Health. So that'll be at the briefing tomorrow, and all the details, we'll figure it out for you tomorrow night.
Yeah, and if parents want to see a how-to video of how to take the rapid tests, Katie Breen did a great video that was on the news last night, but you can also find that on our website at cbc.ca/nl. That's it for us. Good night, everyone.
Good night.